look at the root cause of most mental illness, whether it's psychotic disorder, PTSD, depression, anxiety, ADHD, it's almost always unresolved, unprocessed trauma that's at the core of why we get sick.
You are curing people for PTSD and all these things with a tool that is not a medicine, it's not chemical.
With all the latest discoveries in mental health and neuroscience, that this is the most exciting time for psychiatry ever in the history of our field. Remove the box and start to look outside the box at what else can we do for people that actually gets to the root cause of this illness. Most of our patients don't get better with medications or only therapy. And what's really interesting about psychedelic medicine that most people don't realize, if we were to look at all psychedelics across the board, they're all confusing and new. But when we use them in therapy, they're all used in the same way, which is therapy amplification.
Dr. Dave, you're a psychiatrist and you invented this fantastic tool that I'm using almost every day to better sleep, better focus, better everything, relax, and even, like you said, increase your HRV. Would you mind just like explaining our people here that are joining what it is and how it works?
Absolutely.
And how did you come up with this idea?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
So Apollo is a new kind of wearable technology that works anywhere in your body through your sense of touch. It is what we would call the third generation of wearables. So all the first and second generation wearables that many of you are probably aware of are Oura Rings, Fitbits, Apple Watches, and they all track information about us and then share information with us that we have to act on to feel different or feel better and change our health. The problem is that most people struggle to make behavior change in their lives. And so we thought, well, how do we help people feel better without having to really put much effort in? How do we help optimize the body through the understanding of modern neuroscience to send the right signals to the body that actually improve health and well-being? And so through my work as a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, we were able to discover how to send gentle, soothing sound wave vibrations to the body. You could see me wearing it. I think you could see me wearing it on my chest here. It works anywhere on the body. And it sends soothing vibrations to the body that feel kind of like a hug or somebody that you like holding your hand or holding a pet. And it induces the same state in the body that happens when you get a hug or when you do deep breathing meditation and that kind of thing, but for you. And then it teaches you over time how to get there on your own.
Yeah, it's fantastic because, you know, what is very surprising with this tool is the fact that at first when you put it on and you literally feel some things, but not not an electrical shock or something that you are expecting. And after a few minutes, you got like, oh my God, but this is working very well. I feel like relaxed and more.
Yeah, I use it. We use it all. We all use it every day, and I've been using it every day for 5 or 6 years now. And part of the reason why Apollo came into the market as a wellness product, the way it did, not just a medical product for patients, is because we were working with patients in the lab back starting from 2014 to 2018, and a lot of veterans and traumatized women and people and children, people who had really difficult experiences recovering from mental illness.
Yeah.
And medications weren't working. And so we thought, well, how do we tap into the body's natural ability to heal itself through the nervous system? Because if you look at the history of humans and the way that we, even going back thousands of years to Hippocrates and the ancient origins of Eastern and tribal and Western medicine, the body knows how to heal itself. Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, was very famous for saying this, that the source of healing starts with the person who's seeking to be healed. And so what does that really mean? Well, it means we know, our bodies know what to do if they're given the opportunity and allowed to do it. And so we thought, well, how do you send the right signals to the body that helps us remember how to feel safe enough to heal ourselves? And soothing touch is actually the fastest pathway there. And so we started working with patients and figuring out how to help patients with very severe trauma disorders. But then we started using it ourselves and realized, hey, this is just gentle sound waves and it feels good to us. And we can use it every day as much as we want. It has no side effects. It helps us sleep better, focus better. feel calmer under stressful situations, bounce back more quickly from stressful situations. And you can measure the outcomes with your other wearable trackers like Oura Ring, Apple Watch. You can see your HRV go up over time and your sleep get better over time. And so we decided in about 2018 or 2019 that rather than just releasing this for patients, we had to release it for everyone. And so that became the Apollo product that you see that came out in 2020 that is now available to the general public.
Yeah, that's the one I tested when you first launched. I was part of this initial test, and I remember using it on my workout, and I was just like, this is incredible how much flow state I can get from just using it. Now, let me ask you a question. As a psychiatrist, you must have been in some sort of a controversy because you are curing people for PTSD and all these things and helping people to get over stress and hyperactivity with a tool that is not a medicine. It's not chemical. And it doesn't, except the price of the unit that you're going to use for your lifetime, you don't have any recurrent costs on that. So
Not
you as a
required.
psychiatrist, yeah, that's it. Normally you're supposed to prescribe medicine and get people
Right.
on those pills.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's a good question. I think that our field is at the field of psychiatry and mental health is at a very critical transition point.
Right.
And I would say, and this is one thing that I teach a lot about is with all the latest discoveries in mental health and neuroscience, that this is the most exciting time for psychiatry ever in the history of our field. And the reason is because we have all reached a point, most of our clinicians, and most of the people who actually practice in psychiatry and mental health have seen the same pattern that we saw in our patients, which is that most of our patients don't get better with medications, only medications or only therapy. The response rates are very poor. And if you look at PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, as a major example, where there's tens of millions of people in the United States alone, not just veterans, but across all populations, and a lot of women who are not getting better, they are handed a diagnosis of PTSD and usually a therapy program or medications, and over 70% of them never get better. They are literally stuck with this diagnosis of PTSD for life. And that's not what we as doctors are taught should be the case, right? We're like, and I'm not saying that Apollo cures these conditions, but what we thought when we saw these results coming out of our patients and coming out of the literature that 70% or more of people are never getting better, that we just had to think of something different. Like we had to remove the box and start to look outside the box at what else can we do for people that actually gets to the root cause of this illness. And when you look at the root cause of most mental illness, whether it's psychotic disorder, PTSD, depression, anxiety, ADHD, it's almost always unresolved, unprocessed trauma that's at the core of why we get sick. And when you start to work with people in therapy, and I'm a psychiatrist, but I also spend most of my time doing talk therapy with patients, what we see is that when you help people start to explore and process the unprocessed trauma from the past, rapidly they start to get better. And they get better because they start to feel safe in their own skin and recognize, hey, all these bad things or hard things that happen to me were just things that happened to me, but they're not my fault. And when you start to make that connection, then you disconnect the traumatic event that happened from your identity and sense of self. And you can look at the event and look back and say, hey, this is just a thing that happened. It's not because of me this happened. It's not my fault this happened. It's not because there's something wrong with me. It just happened, and it happens to everyone. Shit happens. You've seen the shit happens shirt, right?
Yeah, but
Every religion.
you still need guidance to get to over that bridge, because like, okay, acknowledging something it seems to be an easy thing to do, but going over PTSD seems to be way more complex.
Very, yeah, it's very complex. And what most people don't talk about is that as soon as, if you already have a diagnosis of PTSD or depression or anxiety, guess what? Meditation works, breath work works, yoga works, exercise works, but good sleep works. But changing your behavior to actually start to fold these new patterns into your life, to start a yoga routine, a regular meditation, breathwork routine, getting good regular sleep, all of those things become harder when you're already stressed out or have a mental health diagnosis. And that's what we were seeing in our patients. So we thought, well, if we could send the signal to the body, which, and if anybody's listening and has an iPhone and you want to try this for yourself, you can literally go on your iPhone right now and download the Apollo Neuro app. It's the purple one with the A. And within 60 seconds, you can hit Feel Apollo on your screen, and you can feel one Apollo vibe as a demo come out of your phone. And you'll feel, when you hold that phone to your chest, exactly what we're talking about in just 1 to 2 minutes. And that signal is the patented vibration sound wave that we discovered, which is the same reason why hugs feel good. It's the same reason why holding purring cat feels good, or a dog. And it's the same reason why deep breathing makes you feel good, is because you're changing the rhythm of the heart and lungs and how they relate to each other to be present and in flow, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
So that is that's what we've been working on, is how do you take this knowledge of neuroscience, the great billions of dollars of research discoveries over the last 100 years, and translate that into tools that the regular average person can just apply. Because breathwork works, but how many people do it successfully? Very few.
Because
right?
Yeah, no one has been educated to do breathwork. That's the problem, like we don't educate our kids to breathe properly, and we should. Our generation has been more exposed to that, but we need to change that first pattern, and the pattern of sleep as well. I do agree with you. Let me take you to a question that just popped up in my mind when you were explaining about this application that you can download.
Before you do that, do you mind if I just comment on what you just said?
Yeah, of course.
So what you just said about teaching breathwork to children is the single most important thing we can teach our kids.
Wow.
More important than speech, more important than learning how to read. All of that stuff can come later. The single most important thing to teach kids, if you have children, is how to breathe properly. And if you can teach kids how to breathe properly, you can start teaching them at 2 years old. You can start teaching them at 1 year old. You can start teaching them really, really young. They master those skills for life.
Yeah.
And that teaches children how to self-soothe themselves. So when they start to get stressed out, rather than going to their phone or going to the TV or trying to go to the other adults to calm them down, they can do it on their own. Yeah. And that is something that ancient Eastern and tribal techniques have been doing for thousands of years, but we have forgotten about in Western culture. Thank goodness it's finally coming back, because science is showing how important it is. But to your point, we have to teach our kids this stuff, because if you teach it to kids when they're young, they have these skills for life. Yeah. And nothing could be more important than that.
Yeah. I so agree on that. I've been fighting for a few years now to try to educate people, and to educate people that are having kids, young generation getting newborn, like start early. I was with Havon recently, Noai on, and the guy was with his daughter. She's 1 year old, one day before the birthday, and he got into a pattern where she got anxious, and he goes to her daughter, and he goes like, how do you control that? And the little kid, she doesn't talk, but she knows how to breathe. And I was just like, this is exactly what the future should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And anyone who's a parent who's struggling with a child who has anxiety or ADHD, or even just starting to look like they have trouble in any of these areas, sleep issues, breathing is the #1 go-to. And it's free, it's easy to do if you learn young. When you are older, it's much harder to learn new breathing patterns. And Pavel with Noah Aon is great, because he teaches adults how to do it also, right? And the way he does it is through music and vibration with Apollo and with other tools.
Yeah, same as you. So I'll jump back to your application and your phone. Do you think that in the future you're going to be able to put like the equivalent of this on some phones, and people can use their phone as they're using the Apollo Neuro? But it's a kind of nonsense for a business point of view, I guess.
No, it's a great question. It's actually something we've been working on for quite a while. And I'm excited to say that as a preview, you can now experience this on your iPhone, but we will be very shortly releasing the specific Apollo vibration experiences that are patented to work on the iPhone, and other vibrating technology will be coming out soon. So stay tuned for that. The one caveat with that is that the iPhone and all other like mobile devices that vibrate can't deliver the sleep vibrations that Apollo delivers.
Right.
So Apollo, one of the benefits of feeling calm, which is also during the day and night, and also feeling calm when you do deep breathing or meditation or yoga or regular exercise, the physiological benefit that happens is when you try to fall asleep, you sleep more deeply and for longer. And so the amount of time you spend in bed, the amount of time you spend in bed asleep rather than awake increases. So you're asleep for more of the time you're in bed. And the benefit that we see in our clinical trials, of which you can see a preview on our website on the research page, but these will be published in the next couple months, is that using Apollo regularly to calm yourself before bed actually increases your sleep as much as doing a regular exercise, meditation, or yoga routine, which is 30 or more minutes a night. So you can
Wow.
imagine just closing your eyes for a minute and imagine how good you'd feel if you got 30 more
30
minutes
minutes.
of sleep a night, right? That's like 3.5 hours more sleep a week,
Yeah.
right? That is huge. And
Huge.
it's just by calming your body before bed. And
Yeah.
again, we can do it for free with breath, but breath is hard. So Apollo is a tool that just helps us get there more easily. And you can only get that benefit from using the Apollo wearable. But over time, these benefits, like the daytime benefits, will start to come out and be available for different mobile device users.
Yeah. But I think that, the downside of using mobile phones and stuff like that will always be the EMF emission from the phone that you don't have with your unit.
Right.
That's still a trigger there. I remember when you came to my podcast, that was super interesting, and you were saying that the Apollo has a program where actually when you get into that sleep pattern of deep sleep and you start waking up, it starts by itself and you actually re-regulate your sleep again to go deeper into your recovery during
Right.
sleep. It's super intelligent. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I can touch on for a minute, which is
Please.
one of the most exciting features of Apollo is the brain that we built that is a subscription option you can add on to your Apollo experience. So if you buy the Apollo that you showed or I'm wearing just in the box, you don't have to pay a subscription, but everything that you do on the device, you have to program manually.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw from studying hundreds of thousands of people using this product, we saw certain patterns of use. Like people would wake up in the middle, they'd use Apollo to fall asleep more quickly. Then they'd wake up in the middle of the night and they'd reach down and tap the buttons and restart the sleep vibes to help them fall asleep more quickly. And we were tracking their sleep, so we'd see them fall asleep more quickly using Apollo. So we thought, well, what is AI really good at? AI is really good at processing data when you're not conscious, when you're asleep, or when you're not aware. So we combined the sleep tracking ability of Apollo and the therapeutic sleepy vibes of Apollo into one product, which is the add-on brain of Apollo. It's only $100 a year,
Yeah.
but when you subscribe to that, Apollo does everything for you automatically based on our clinical studies of what makes it work the best. And so the first feature we released, called Smart Vibes, is actually able, for the very first time in the history of sleep medicine and science, to detect when you're about to wake up in the middle of the night and turn Apollo on automatically to prevent you from waking up when you don't want to be awake. So it won't stop you from getting up to go pee or use the bathroom. It won't stop you from attending to a screaming child, but it will stop you from waking up with a stressful thoughts and racing mind, right?
Yeah.
And when we see people using that feature, of which we now have tens of thousands of people using it, we've over the last year, what we see is people's sleep goes up from 30 minutes more a night with using Apollo Basic to 60 or more minutes of sleep a night using Apollo Premium with Smart Vibes, because the AI is doing it for you when you're unconscious. And that is revolutionary for the field
It,
of sleep
yeah,
science.
it is almost like having a cure of sleep, getting to that point, to that extreme. Now, I have a
Getting
controversial
there.
question for you
Sure.
again. Can I, using this every day, can I become addicted to it?
No. And my background in psychiatry, for
It's
those who
in
don't know,
addiction.
is
I
actually,
know.
yeah, addiction and trauma psychiatry.
Yeah.
And so I spent most of my early career as a psychiatrist taking people off of addictive and harmful medications that were having side effects so that we could help them recover naturally. And that worked. And so, but it was very hard. It was very, very hard to get people off of some of these addictive medications like opiates, benzodiazepines, even SSRI medications like Zoloft and Prozac that are not
Yeah.
considered addictive, but they have withdrawal
Yeah.
syndrome when people stop taking them. It's very, very hard to get people off. And so when we designed Apollo, we designed it to act on the touch receptor system, which is a natural system, meaning it's a system that's always functioning in our bodies all the time. It's just not getting enough input. We're not getting enough hugs. We're not getting enough hand holding. We're not getting enough like gentle embraces, right? We're not getting these natural things that induce all the wonderful positive neurotransmitters that we deserve to feel when we feel good. So soothing touch actually is the most natural way to increase dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, our critical bonding hormone, endorphins, one of our major reward hormones and neurotransmitters, and then things like endocannabinoids. So our body's own natural cannabinoid molecules that get synthesized when we feel good, when we experience soothing touch, that calm the body and reduce inflammation. And soothing touch isn't addictive, right? It's not a drug. It's just something that's good for us.
Yeah.
We need it. We need it to live and be healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, but it's not addictive. And so we designed Apollo to actually train the body through the pathway of soothing touch so that people actually learn how to enter flow states more without it by using it. And so when we've tracked users over the last 4 years using it, what we've seen is people like you and I, anyone who starts using it, they usually use it like most of the day, almost all day. They wear it all day, and they wear it a lot, especially for the first 6 to 12 months. But then over the course of the time after that, people start using it, still using it, but they use it less often and lower intensity. And this is called a sensitization or learning effect in psychiatry and biology. So the body is actually learning how to feel calmer in situations that we never remembered feeling calm in before, like falling asleep before bed, right? And if you start to experience like the experience that my wife had and many others had, and that I had with public speaking, for instance, that I use Apollo to help with, and that trained me out of my public speaking anxiety, is basically I would walk on stage and I would feel stressed and nervous every time. All of a sudden, I walk on stage with Apollo, I feel calm. I'm in flow. I'm present. I'm like, wait, I don't have to be stressed right now.
Yeah.
My body is self-regulating and it's learning how to self-regulate. So if I can associate something that used to only be a trigger of stress to now be a state that I can feel calm in, I know that I have the capacity to feel calm in this situation. And then I train my body over time to be calm in those situations and in flow rather than in my head doing this all the time.
Right. So in a way or the other, it triggers neuroplasticity then, because you create those pathways and you learn by yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think Apollo is not, I don't want to overstate anything. Apollo is not unique as a neuroplasticity enhancement tool. The reason that it increases learning, and neuroplasticity and learning are the same terms. Neuroplasticity is like our fancy neuroscience word for learning, but the reason why it works is because we need to feel safe to learn new things. If we are threatened or under stress or we're in a fear state, our bodies and our brains actually resist learning new things because newness gets associated with uncertainty and uncertainty gets associated with fear. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, newness. I'm going to go back to my Haagen-Dazs and Netflix. That's more comfortable for me. That's familiar, right? Familiarity is safety. So if
Comfort
every time
zone.
I'm stressed, I go pick up a cigarette,
Yeah.
right? Even though I know that's bad for me and it doesn't solve my stress problem, it's familiar.
Mm.
So I associate it with safety, but it doesn't solve the stress problem. Does that make sense? So it's
That makes
create.
total sense. And that's how addiction comes in actually at the same time. And this takes me to one of the favorite topics I like to talk with you, psychedelics.
Yep.
So I know that you have been working so hard on that field, especially integrating MDMA for PTSD and all these things. Can you share a bit of your knowledge on that particular field that is getting a big hype recently? Like, unfortunately, it hasn't been recognized by the FDA, but we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. And there will be constant challenges in this field, mainly because there's been so much misunderstanding about how psychedelics
Right.
work and what they do. And the Western medicine field has a lot of catching up to do in the psychedelic space. But
Mm.
ultimately, I've been studying psychedelic medicine for, I don't know, maybe about 12 years now. And the the thing about, and I'm also trained, for those who don't know, I'm trained in MDMA assisted therapy and ketamine assisted therapy. And what's really interesting about psychedelic medicine that most people don't realize is that they all kind of work in a similar way. So if we were to look at all psychedelics across the board, most people look at them and they're like, oh, ayahuasca,
Mm.
ibogaine, MDMA, ketamine, LSD, they're all different. They're all confusing and new, right?
Right.
And that's on the surface, sure, it's true. They are confusing and new. But when we use them in therapy, and they've been used in therapy since the 1950s, believe it or not,
Correct.
what's
Yeah.
really interesting about psychedelics is they're all used in therapy for the same reason. Whether you're in a tribal culture or whether you're in Western medicine, they're all used in the same way, which is therapy amplification. So it accelerates the therapeutic process because therapy is about learning new things about yourself. What did we talk about earlier with learning and neuroplasticity? You have to feel safe enough to learn new
Right.
things to be able to learn new things and have them stick. If you're in a fear state or a traumatized state or a triggered state, new stuff comes in and we resist it or reject it and it doesn't stick. So safety is actually the key word here. And the reason why MDMA, I'll just talk about MDMA for a minute because that's the one that is getting the most news and press right now. MDMA is so interesting because it is a molecular amplifier of the safety cascades in the emotional brain that helps us or whoever's experiencing it to feel safe enough to remake meaning around past traumatic events and to recognize that it wasn't my fault that this happened to me. It wasn't because of me. There's nothing wrong with me that these things happened. These things just happened, and I did the best I could. And I don't need to be afraid of myself or victimize myself for the rest of my life. I can actually accept that I am okay and just fine and deserving of love just as I am with these events not defining me anymore, right? And so MDMA, and then what's interesting about that is that's how regular old trauma therapy works. Regular old trauma therapy is based on that exact same theory of how we heal from trauma and remake meaning around past traumatic events.
Mhm.
MDMA is just this beautiful molecule that, when used properly, accelerates that progress through activating these safety cascades in the brain. And then people feel safe enough to remember how to heal themselves again. And nothing could be more promising for the future of
That.
psychiatry than
Yeah.
teaching our patients, teaching all of us that we have the ability to heal ourselves. We just need to remember how to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So that is beautiful. I think that most of the rejection comes from the fact that many people think that those drugs or substances um, makes people not taking responsibilities and avoiding taking responsibility, which is the contrary actually. But they are perceived that way, and that's why they are rejected so hardly by a majority of people around there. And the work that you're doing, of course, is going to make sure that people understand the right principle of it. Uh,
Yeah, and
Keep going on that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually quite the opposite, right?
Mm.
That
Yeah. Right.
as you alluded to, it's
Yeah.
actually benzodiazepines, opioids, and sedative and hypnotic medications and alcohol that have a side effect of impaired judgment and impaired insight that reduces people's willingness to take accountability and responsibility for their actions,
Yeah.
right? It makes it harder to break repetitive habits and cycles. Psychedelic medicines across the board are interesting because they're mind revealing. So they increase insight. They improve our ability to make good judgments after the fact, after the therapy experience. You can improve your ability to make thoughtful decisions about your life and what you're doing and why, because you've thought through it more, you have more insight. So it's actually the psychedelic medicine family that is truly revolutionary for mental health because they're insight promoting tools. They help you look inside yourself for a certain amount of time. And it's looking inside yourself in a non-judgmental way where you feel safe enough to do so. That is what really makes the therapy, the therapeutic process of healing from mental illness go much, much smoother and faster. It's the suppression of insight from benzodiazepines, opiates, long-term use of sedatives, hypnotics, even SSRIs that numb us to our feelings, right? It's the suppression of emotion and suppression of insight and feeling that actually results in mental illness continuing for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. So not encouraging people to go on psychedelics, but it's always good to remember everyone that the sets and setting is super important when you get into that pathway.
Yeah, exactly. And the people you surround yourself by when you are taking a psychedelic medicine is more important than the medicine itself, because the medicine amplifies these feelings from the environment. So they were coined by Stan Grof in the 1950s, I believe, as non-specific amplifiers of awareness. So what this means is that if you take a psychedelic in an environment that's scary, you'll amplify feelings of fear. But if you take a psychedelic, right? And that's why people have bad psychedelic experiences. That's why people have bad trips, because they don't feel safe enough for the emotions to come up and to be felt. So they shut them down. But those emotions are like, hey, buddy, I need you to feel me. And you're like, no, I don't want to feel you right now. And then you wind up in a bad trip. So it's the therapy, the psychedelic assisted therapy, that is critical to understand, to have guidance, right? It's like going on, like you would never go on your first like whitewater rafting trip in the rapids, or go on your first like backcountry mountain expedition by yourself without a guide, right? Why?
Because you need to feel safe.
Right, you might never come back. Right? I mean, it's like a real problem. So it's no different. It's no different with going on a psychedelic, having a psychedelic adventure in your mind. It's the same it's the same uncharted territory. Right. And so when we are moving into uncharted territory, whether it's outside on a mountainside or on a river rapids, or whether it's in your head, in your body and emotions, it's uncharted territory. And we need guidance for that territory. So having the guidance is actually critical, and making sure you feel safe with those guides is critical, because that's what gets you the long-lasting outcomes and long-term benefits. If you don't have those guides, you might accidentally increase neuroplasticity and learning of stuff that isn't real or isn't actually important to you, and you can easily make things worse. So that's why we emphasize the psychedelic assisted psychotherapy piece, not just psychedelics, go take them. It's not about that. It's
in a controlled environment.
Therapy.
I love it. I recommend everyone to follow Dave, Dr. Dave Rabin on Instagram. Check the website as well, the Apollo, download the application. Every time I talk to you, I'm just like, oh my God, there is so much to learn and to go. And the word is so positive, because at the end of the day, we're making steps in the right direction. And this, and I think that this mental health issue is getting now more attention. We have been like trying to biohack everything on this planet, but not the mental health. So let's biohack the mental health.
Agreed.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dave, Dr. Dave Rabin. Thank you for joining us on this live Instagram here. We will put this video on YouTube and Instagram, take some extracts and everything. And I do encourage you to follow and to see what he has to say. Look at Dr. Dave's page. It's insane how much you can learn just in one day by scrolling and going on the post. Thank you. I appreciate you, brother.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
You too.
See you soon.
Take
Bye.
care.